This is a planet where learning will get you scorned. The girl not only studies in secret but also achieves significant results. Some people on the planet conspire to have her executed, while her mother can only accept an invitation from a distant empire first. Two people are on guard at the border because as soon as you leave this planet, you will also be expelled from it. An Imperial spaceship rushes in from 100,000 light years away specifically to welcome this inconspicuous girl. She asks her parents to go with her, but both her mother and father have never been educated and cannot survive on an outer planet. Reluctantly, she can only bid farewell to her family. The two of them give way to her, representing that she can never set foot on the planet again. Her mother prays for her daughter again as the spaceship departs, and she disappears from her family's sight forever. The spaceship heads to a transit station in space to replace it with a more advanced ship. Having never encountered technology on her home planet, she appears somewhat at a loss. Although she has seen the methods in books, there is always some difference from reality. The emissary welcoming her provides on-site instruction, and Gaal finally learns how to use the identification verification system. The two enter the sleep chamber, and the staff connect the devices to them. Although she has never seen it in real life, Gaal already knows the principles and mathematical formulas by heart. The spiderweb-like device wraps around her. If one hasn't undergone strict training, the body and mind will not be able to coordinate in the wormhole. There are many fellow travelers at the transit station. As the spaceship's jump device activates, powerful energy gradually forms a wormhole. During the flight, Gaal's sleep device seems to malfunction. She unexpectedly wakes up and sees a marvelous moment inside the wormhole. The staff sees the girl awake and quickly attempts to remedy the situation. As the spaceship leaves the wormhole, the jump device gradually stops functioning. Seeing the elevator of Chanto Star, Gaal can't help but exclaim in admiration for this cylindrical elevator. It stretches all the way from space down to 100 levels beneath Chanto Star, and the spaceship completes docking. Since Chanto Star is the Imperial capital, it appears particularly bustling. Suddenly, a pair of Imperial soldiers walk through the crowd. A few days ago, there was a conflict on the edge of the galaxy, and these Imperial evaluators perished during it. Their remains are escorted by soldiers into the city and need to undergo strict security checks. Since Gaal's guarantor is Seldon, she easily obtains a pass. Entering the passenger compartment, she sits down as required, and the compartment begins to descend rapidly. Due to the great distance from the ground, even at this speed, it will take a full 14 hours to land on the surface. Strictly speaking, it isn't the surface yet, as billions of residents live 100 levels underground. They spend their entire lives working underground yet never get the chance to see what the first level looks like. The first level is home to the Emperor's palace. They are dawn, day, and dusk, three clones of the same person, but at different ages. Whenever one of them dies, the next clone immediately takes their place. Eternal life continues without any succession process. 14 hours quickly pass, and Gaal finally descends from the transit station to level 64 underground. The emissary who welcomed her has completed their task. The remaining matters are no longer their concern. The two formally bid farewell. She takes out her identification tag and searches for Seldon's student, who is here to pick her up. Finally, they meet, and the student gives her a general understanding of the surrounding environment. Gaal then realizes that the sky is filled with virtual images. Most people spend their entire lives unable to leave this level. She finally arrives at the Imperial Library managed by Seldon, which houses most of the galaxy's treasured texts, something she never had the chance to see on her home planet. The student introduces Gaal to Seldon, and she is thrilled to see him in person. It is precisely because of Seldon's invitation that she could leave her home planet and come to the prosperous empire. But this is due to her abilities. Gaal is the first person in 500 years to solve the Abraxas conjecture. He opens a bookshelf and takes out a book, listening to the girl recount how she solved the conjecture, and Seldon is amazed. No one could have anticipated this step from her, but Seldon is curious about how she came to such conclusions. It's important to know that on her planet, even learning is a crime, and Gaal habitually dares not answer. Seldon quickly hints that curiosity is not a crime here. Perhaps it's because of this loneliness. On her home planet, there are almost no others who think like him. Even with the sea level about to rise and submerge their homes, no one listens to her opinions. Seldon understands this feeling and pulls out a treasured book in his hand, proving that the original manuscripts show Gaal and Gaal come from the same home planet. Perhaps, in some mysterious way, she has been influenced by Gaal. She is very excited to take this precious manuscript, and Seldon suddenly speaks. saying that tomorrow the Empire will capture both of them. Gaal hasn't yet reacted to why they want to capture her. It's precisely because she believes in Seldon's theories and the history of psychology. Those are not just theories but tangible human destinies expressed through mathematics. The Empire fears capturing her because they are worried about this theoretical prediction of the future. Because of this future, the Empire does not like. Chanto's star will be destroyed, and the Empire is also on the verge of extinction. Gaal should already understand this is not just her wishful thinking, but mathematics showing humanity's fate. But why would the Empire agree to let her come over across 100,000 light-years and then want to capture her? That's a good question. Seldon picks up a circular holographic device on the table, and an image predicting the fate of the galaxy appears. As Seldon turns it off, she finally understands. It's precisely because she solved the Abraxas conjecture that only she can prove this conjecture is wrong. Indeed, that's the case. But the fact is this conjecture is not wrong. Gaal finds it hard to accept that she risked her life coming here just to support Seldon's predictions, but she should know that after solving the conjecture, staying on her home planet would also pose a danger to her life. Mathematics has never just been about numbers. In the hands of the wrong people, it becomes a powerful weapon. In the hands of the right people, it becomes a blessing for humanity. Seldon tells her to rest for a moment and quietly wait in the hotel for the arrival of her capture, giving her the original manuscript as a small comfort. Gaal feels that such a gift is too precious, but the library will eventually be turned to ashes, so taking it now is akin to protection. Gaal has read all of Seldon's studies on psychohistory but never thought the research was meant to predict the future. But now the Empire needs to use her to prove Seldon's prophecy wrong. But after proving it, what awaits her is merely an accidental death. She finds a hotel to stay in, and sure enough, at dawn, the door is opened without any notice, and the Empire, along with soldiers, comes to capture her. She is soon to go to court, and during the waiting period, Seldon has his old friend find her. As predicted by Seldon, she was arrested this morning too. Both of them are charged with conspiracy to endanger the Empire. Gaal finds it hard to accept. She is just an innocent person. Her old friend places a jamming device on the table, allowing them to converse freely. Since she solved the conjecture, the Empire has already obtained Seldon's conclusions. They want to use Gaal to prove the conclusions wrong in front of the public, so the Empire can maintain its position securely. Unfortunately, she has become Seldon's bait, and soldiers escort her to the court. Seldon has long been brought here. The judge announces the court is in session, and the lawyer lists the charges against both of them, then turns to let Seldon present his research to the jury. The three emperors and the public are all very interested in this trial. Seldon's research on psychohistory is a predictive model. In simple terms, this model has predicted that the Empire, with a population of 80 trillion, will collapse within 500 years. The emperor is very displeased with such a prediction. The lawyer assumes that if the prediction is correct, how can one prove that it will indeed happen in 500 years? Only this mathematician beside him can prove it. The lawyer now has something to say. Even Seldon himself cannot prove it. So how could a 12,000-year-old empire possibly disappear in 500 years? Perhaps even 500 years is considered a long time. The decaying towering tree looks magnificent, yet it only takes a storm for the entire tree to turn to dust. Recent conflicts on the outskirts of the galaxy are just the harbingers of disaster. The upcoming interstellar wars will be endless, and countless planets, including the Empire, will turn to radioactive dust in this catastrophe. No matter what preventive measures are taken, the arrival of destruction cannot be avoided. Moreover, after the collapse of galactic civilization, this darkest hour will last for 30,000 years. The lawyer believes Seldon's exaggerated predictions are merely aimed at destroying public faith, with the true intention of overthrowing the Empire. But Seldon is not interested in these. The reason he stands up despite the danger is that he wants to lessen the destructive force of this disaster. While the disaster is unavoidable, they can strive to shorten the dark period after destruction. With sufficient preparation, 30,000 years could be reduced to 1,000 years. After the session, the emissary who came to pick up Gaal invites her to meet and also gives her Seldon's original holographic device. Inside it contains all the predictions about the Empire. The Empire hopes Gaal can prove these conclusions wrong so that she can save her life, and the Emperor will express his gratitude through other means. In short, if she doesn't obey, the only result is death. But is the Empire really not worried about the prophecies coming true? After executing Seldon, the Empire will discuss strategies to solve subsequent problems. The immediate priority is to stabilize the 80 trillion citizens. After the incident, Gaal uses her ability to unlock the holographic device, this time examining the predicted results in great detail. It turns out that Seldon's predictions are correct. The next day, the court continues, and Seldon explains to the public how to shorten the darkest hour. He suggests the Empire immediately start distributed construction of bases throughout the galaxy, condensing 12,000 years of knowledge into a galactic encyclopedia. After the disaster, civilization is bound to rise again, and this time, it will not have to start from scratch because the knowledge already exists. Moreover, this action not only saves knowledge but also saves the story of humanity. These stories will be passed down through generations of future civilizations. Although Chantostar already has an Imperial library, how long can it stand? Perhaps it won't even last until tomorrow. To counter the predictions, the lawyer begins to have Gaal present counterarguments, putting all hope on her. But Gaal's statements do not meet the Emperor's expectations. She directly affirms Seldon's prediction that the Empire will eventually fall. As soon as the words leave her mouth, the Emperor immediately orders both to be executed, and they are taken away by soldiers to be executed. A man recites an incantation and presses a button, creating a hole in the star bridge that extends from space to the ground. Innocent passengers in the star bridge fall into space. The tremendous force causes the cableway to break, and this towering column begins to collapse. The descending passenger compartment is also affected by the chain reaction. Without protection, they fall from the cableway, directly plummeting down. The immense friction creates sparks, glass starts to shatter, and the brightly lit city below sees some debris fall early. People look up at the sky as disaster descends. The cableway, which could circle the planet, collapses as if the sky has been punctured. The Emperor's pure gold statue is crushed, and even the Imperial library is not spared. This unseen pillar lies in the middle of the planet, almost splitting the Empire in two. With billions of innocent residents dying in this disaster, unexpectedly, Seldon's prediction that the Empire would perish within 500 years has now resulted in such a tragedy in less than a day. The Emperor is extremely angry. The cableway wraps around the planet like a torture device, embedding itself 50 levels underground. The emissary tries to explain, but the Emperor has no time for this nonsense. Before the incident occurred, the attackers shouted the unique trench battle cry of their planet. He can swear he had no part in this attack, but it is too late now. The Emperor decides to withdraw the gifts they offered for peace. Imperial soldiers enter Gaal's detention area, putting a helmet on her and taking her to face the three emperors. He had already suspected that the Empire would shift the blame onto them, and he was preparing to do just that. However, his science can only predict general trends. It cannot foresee individual actions. Nevertheless, such an attack is not unexpected. The Empire's sphere of influence is too vast. Many planets have bowed down in submission and paid tribute for over 10,000 years, and some have long begun to feel weary. Now, with such a beginning, as more people realize the Empire is not so great, even greater attacks are on the way. Rebellions could even occur within Chantostar itself. The Emperor only wants to know who is behind the attack. If he doesn't get a name, he will have Seldon and all who believe in the prophecy executed. But if he does this, the Emperor will lose power within a year. Seeing this genius speak up, he is eager to hear more. After studying the calculations of Seldon's predictions, Gaal discovers that if Seldon dies prematurely, the Empire will accelerate its decline. It seems such a calculation is very beneficial for them, but only Seldon can shorten the dark period after destruction. Killing him is killing hope. Without hope, these 80 trillion citizens will only seek to overthrow the Empire. The Emperor finds this argument skillfully constructed and airtight. The only person who can save the galaxy is now in the same room. He asks if there is a way to delay the time of destruction. Not only can they delay it, but they can also postpone it by hundreds of years. As long as they terminate the Emperor's cloning program. The Dusk King angrily smashes a teacup. The chaos from stopping the Imperial cloning program has brought peace to the entire galaxy. The Imperial cloning program was initiated by Clean Eye, who believed that his successors would not be capable of leading the Empire further. So the Emperor cloned himself into 3 versions: Dawn, Day, and Dusk. They possess Clean Eye's superior intelligence, and under the leadership of the cloning program, the Empire has survived for 13 generations. Now Seldon dares to demand its cessation. The two are taken away for temporary detention. The 3 emperors discuss countermeasures, and it quickly becomes clear that executing them is not a good choice. It would provoke the anger of the people of Chantostar, so he permits Seldon to continue refining his predictive model, and the Empire will fund the construction of a base to preserve the seeds of civilization for future generations. However, the location will be slightly changed. The base will be constructed on Endpoint Star, located in the uninhabited regions at the edge of the galaxy. Moreover, Endpoint Star just happens to be situated next to two barbarian planets, making the barbarian kingdoms their neighbors. Not only that, but they will also be limited to slow-moving starships, with a ban on using jump ships, which is essentially akin to exile to the frontier, because being far at the edge of the galaxy will prevent them from causing trouble for Chanto Star. At the same time, the Empire also fulfills the wishes of the people. They will know that Seldon is leading a team to prevent this galactic disaster, though they won't know where it is happening. Years later, if the prophecy does not come true, the base at the corner of the galaxy will gradually decline, and if Seldon succeeds, then the Empire will integrate the base back and continue to use him to solidify its power. In this way, the Empire will not lose out regardless. The two are dispatched, and Gaal has never even heard of Endpoint Star. It is located 100,000 light-years away, and without jump ships, they will need a full 878 days to reach it. Furthermore, the climate there is difficult to adapt to, and metals and minerals are extremely scarce. Seeing Seldon speak so confidently, Gaal finally realizes this has long been part of the plan. Endpoint Star has always been an excellent site for building a base, far at the edge of the galaxy and yet under Imperial protection. The key is that it won't be monitored by the Empire. Seldon wants to know what Gaal saw in the predictive model and why her death would lead to the Empire's accelerated decline. It turns out this is Gaal's kind-hearted lie. Since the Empire is destined to fall, she wants to see how to leave the seeds of humanity for future civilizations. Although agreeing with Seldon's requests temporarily stabilizes the people of Chanto Star, the attack that resulted in the deaths of billions of Imperial residents must still provoke some response. If someone thinks the Empire can be easily bullied, then the troubles ahead will be significant. First, they must locate the research facility that created the subcutaneous nanobombs. Hearing the alarm, researchers hurriedly erase the data. Imperial soldiers break into the laboratory and kill indiscriminately. After the scene quiets, he approaches the soldiers and reveals the recreated situation from that time. She wants to know which planet the laboratory collaborated with and takes out a device that can allow her to breathe even with a broken neck, enabling her to speak again. Whether she speaks the truth will determine her fate. But after interrogating thousands of suspects, they still could not find the mastermind behind the attack. The Emperor wants to know how many bodies are floating along the planet's orbit, only to find there are still more than 100,000. It turns out that most of the rescue forces are on the ground urgently saving the injured. The Emperor demands that most personnel be drawn to prioritize cleaning up the floating bodies above, so that people don't look up and mistakenly think the Empire is incompetent. Cleaning up the bodies will take time, and the Empire still needs to respond to the attack. After repeatedly playing the language shouted by the attackers, the emissary recognizes it as a hunting song once used on their planet. The Emperor questions why the attackers used their unique hunting song. The emissary explains that anyone could imitate such sounds, but the Empire had long tried to incorporate the song as part of education. They discovered that the Imperial people could never master this peculiar dialect. Yet the attackers sang it with such ease. The emissary can only state that Anacreon firmly denies involvement in this attack. His subordinates project an image of another group of attackers, and it is clear to hear that this is indeed the ancient language of Dispus. The emissary takes some time to translate the sentence. As this language has not been used for over a century, the Emperor does not want to hear these excuses. Even though he has known for a long time that someone is sowing discord, these two planets have been at odds since their inception, making it impossible for them to conspire together. The Emperor does not care. What the Empire needs is to respond to the attack for billions of stars. At this moment, the Dusk Emperor stands before the Preservation Cabinet of Clean Eye. According to the Imperial cloning regulations, the Dusk Emperor's time is almost up, allowing space for a new emperor to wrap up his career neatly. He wants to resolve the incident properly. During the meeting with the emissaries from both countries, he pulls out a fine wine that he has been aging since his youth to express the Empire's apologies. The emissary cannot understand. No one would be foolish enough to leave evidence of their involvement in an attack, especially not one that includes such a distinct ancient language. Moreover, the two nations have been subservient to the Empire for over 3,000 years, and there hasn't been a year when they have forgotten to pay tribute. This attack benefits neither of them. Someone must be causing trouble behind the scenes. Despite this, both will still be executed. Their sacrifice will serve as a step for the Empire to respond. Otherwise, there will be no way to account for the billions of deceased citizens. This is a sacrifice they are destined to make, and they will be hailed as contributors to the Empire's great cause. The Dusk Emperor informs the Day Emperor of the proper solution, but he seems reluctant to show such mercy, starting to inquire about the young Dawn. However, a child can only feel fear from this, and the Day Emperor comforts him, stating that he still has time to grow. The Emperor escorts the two delegations to the execution platform, removing the blindfold helmets from them. All the emissaries are tied up. The Emperor addresses the crowd, declaring that today will be the Empire's response to the attack. The aged Dusk can no longer display authority in front of the people. The Emperor hopes the public will remember this day, although the pain of losing companions will resonate through generations. After today, all deceased Chanto people can find peace, and the Empire will grow stronger. He gestures, and the projections of the two planets appear. The crowd is very excited, but the emissaries are terrified, as all those dense white dots are Imperial Air Force ships. The emissary bows his head in prayer, but the Emperor leans down to force him to watch this fireworks display. Countless fleets are ready. The Dusk Emperor watches all this, knowing that his advice had already been ignored. The emissary wants to say something, but the blade has already been loaded. The Emperor pushes the emissary down while countless fleets open fire on the planets. The emissary is executed one by one, and the attack on the planets does not cease. This humiliation will be remembered for their entire lives. Every time the Emperor lightly gestures with his finger, millions of people lose their lives and homes. It isn't until half of the planet's population is dead or injured that the Emperor finally announces a halt to the attack. The emissary kneels on the ground, praying for his home. The Emperor decides to spare their lives so they can return to warn their kind still living. He also wants to ensure that billions of other planets in the galaxy know the consequences of provoking the Empire. But he does not realize what future troubles such thorough extermination will leave for the Empire. The young Dawn stands amidst the corpses, feeling very scared, and his adoptive mother comforts him. Not every decision will be like today. He too is destined to make such choices one day, as it is the duty of an emperor, and he will not be fighting alone. The scholar who has been in hiding for many years has been captured and will be executed this morning. Gaal had secretly studied with the scholar years ago, but as a devoted servant, the prophet sent him to see off the prisoner. He will take his books down to the depths. Everyone on the planet believes in a god known as the Sleeper, and any actions that contradict the Sleeper's tenets are seen as blasphemy. Each person's face is embedded with 6 gems, symbolizing their piety to the deity. The time for execution has come. The priest removes the divine lamp and hands over the forbidden books. Only by sinking with these sins into the depths can their sins be cleansed. She looks at her enlightening mentor, feeling very sad, but dares not defy the prophet's orders. Before dying, the scholar warns everyone that forbidding the spread of knowledge will not change the fact that sea levels are about to rise and submerge their homes. It seems to call upon the ambitious Gaal to continue pursuing her mathematical dream. The prophet kicks a stone into the water, the weight of the stone dragging the books and the scholar down to the depths. Though powerless against it all, she decides to start making changes. In the midnight when no one is around, she jumps into the water. The depths are filled with corpses. They are scholars who were executed as heretics. She finally finds him, but he has long since died. She unties the ropes so the corpses are no longer bound and immediately dives to rescue this precious work of predecessors. Having grown up by the seaside, Gaal is an excellent swimmer, but staying underwater for so long nearly costs her life. From then on, every midnight when everyone else falls into slumber, she lights a candle to study mathematics. She wants to solve a mathematical conjecture from the Galactic Empire. In a place where books are banned, possessing stationery also leads to execution, but there are always more solutions than difficulties. She uses seaweed as writing paper to inscribe words, although it isn't as convenient as modern technology. Each time she makes progress in solving problems, these challenges no longer seem insurmountable. One morning, she finds the black market mentioned by her friend and asks them to help send an article to the Imperial University. The two are very cautious, as she could very well be a thread leading back to the prophet. Gaal quickly offers all the currency she has earned since working, a total of 50 shells. The two exchange glances and accept this payment. Completing the transaction, Gaal takes the article and hides in a secluded place before daring to take out this high-tech device. If discovered using technology, that would be a far more serious crime than learning itself. Using the knowledge she learned from books, she fumbled to unlock this voice transmission from 100,000 light-years away. It was Seldon from Chanto Star University. This message was to congratulate him. Gaal has proposed a brand new solution to the Abraxas conjecture. Since the proposal was published, many in the Empire's academic community scoffed at it. After all, for centuries, all Imperial mathematicians had failed to solve this problem. A person from a planet where learning is prohibited makes it even harder for those old-timers to accept. But the beauty of mathematics lies here. It doesn't change its results due to regional bias or age. As Seldon proved the proposal, He found the process to be exquisite, believing that the doubts from the academic community would soon improve. To show the Empire's respect, Seldon invited her to Chantostar to give a lecture explaining the proof process to those stubborn mathematicians. The Empire will also negotiate with Gaal's planet through official channels, ensuring her family's safety, and hopes that Gaal will accept this sincere invitation. She is very excited that her years of perseverance have not been in vain. Her family learns from messages that someone from their planet is in communication with the Empire. They are both shocked. This could lead to the death penalty. Gaal takes them to a corner to tell her parents that the sea level is about to rise, and this place will no longer be habitable. But when they learn the information does not come from the sleeper but from mathematics, her father looks down on it. Gaal can only tell her parents that she is the one who solved the Empire's problem and hopes they can go with her to Chantostar. Upon hearing the name of that mechanical planet, her father's anger intensifies. He would rather have never had this daughter. Her mother's reaction is different. She knows her daughter has always wanted to be a mathematician. The prophet, having received official news from the Empire, naturally does not dare to act recklessly. They remove the mark from Gaal's face. After doing all this, they return home, and her parents find it hard to accept. From now on, she is no longer a resident of this planet. They personally send their daughter onto the spaceship leaving home. From then on, she is forbidden to return to this planet. Her parents will never see their daughter again. After the Abraxas conjecture is proven by Gaal, they discover that the Empire, with a history of 15,000 years, will perish within 500 years. The Emperor is very displeased with this prophecy, but since the Imperial residents have all learned the news, they cannot easily execute Gaal and Seldon, as it would incite public outrage. Thus, the Empire comes up with a method to superficially agree to Seldon's request, allowing the construction of bases to preserve human knowledge for future civilizations, but they prohibit the use of jump ships. Without jump technology, it will take them nearly 3 years to travel to Endpoint Star. On the way to Endpoint Star, something unbelievable happens. Seldon's adopted son, Rake, inexplicably decides to kill his adoptive father. During the journey, Rake and Gaal develop feelings for each other. He places Gaal into the ship's sleep chamber, a liquid that induces sleep while maintaining vital signs. Everything happens so suddenly that Gaal cannot comprehend what is happening. As the sleep chamber descends, she will sleep in the vastness of space. Rake leans at the window, as if he has been left with some important task. The sleep chamber floats in space, and in the blink of an eye, over 30 years pass before a ship retrieves the chamber. As the sleeping liquid drains, Gaal finally awakens. Her body feels very uncomfortable upon waking, a small price to pay for freezing time. She has no idea where she is, only remembering that her boyfriend suddenly killed Seldon. She knocks on the door with all her might, but there is no response. A few minutes later, the ship is activated. Her journey has been set by Rake over 30 years ago, and it has just now started. As she steps through the door, faint lights illuminate her path. The ship's control room is empty. She wants to operate the ship's computer but needs to undergo identity verification. After stating her name, the passenger list appears on the ship, and there is only her. Gaal tries to call for the release ship, which was the vessel that originally went to Endpoint Star, but the release ship had its mission terminated in the year 12072. Hearing that year, she is puzzled and learns that it is now the year 12102. She has been sleeping in the chamber for nearly 35 years, meaning she is nearly 60 years old by normal standards. Since she lacks the operational permissions for the ship, she has to find another way. Passengers have the right to view the Empire's public records, so she first checks if anyone is on Endpoint Star. Seeing the Imperial population log, she breathes a sigh of relief. It appears that the plan for Endpoint Star has not been halted. She begins to search for news of Seldon's death. Public records show that there were 2 killers of Seldon. One was his adopted son, and the other was Gaal. She has been falsely accused. Seldon's body, according to his wishes, was ejected into space, and his supporters will continue to complete the unfinished industries of Seldon. In truth, it was merely an excuse for the Empire to exile these troublesome individuals. She starts looking for the trial results of her boyfriend. Rake does not deny killing Seldon, but insists it has nothing to do with Gaal. It was entirely his doing. At the moment of his execution, he seems to be speaking to Gaal, urging her not to lose hope. He will fill in the missing piece of the prophecy. He may have intended to express his love for Gaal, but before he could say it, he was exiled to space and executed. Years later, Gaal sees these images, and her willpower collapses. She even wishes not to live anymore. In a critical moment, the ship suddenly veers, Throwing her down, Gaal finally realizes that Rake must have had a reason for arranging all this. She regains her confidence and asks the computer if it just performed a course correction. Indeed, it did, indicating the ship is nearing its destination. She wants to know where the location is but lacks the permissions to check. Moving to the window and looking at the outside environment, she begins to jump and request various public information. Like a glitch in a video game, after gathering enough data, she merges the information and finally narrows down her general direction. After a complex manual mathematical calculation, she has finally reduced the target point to a small range. But what she sees outside the window should not be the scene. After inquiring, she learns that the image displayed by the window is actually a virtual wallpaper. Why did Rake want to prevent her from seeing the outside view? Returning to the sleep chamber, she discovers a spacesuit placed beside her and begins to put on the gear. She needs to see the scene outside with her own eyes. But even when she gets outside, it's quite strange. With the naked eye, she cannot see anything at all. What kind of planet is imperceptible to the naked eye? She thinks of infrared filters and indeed finds a dark star. No wonder it cannot be perceived visually. What kind of mission awaits at the dark star? At the edge of the galaxy, there is a planet suitable for human habitation. Human colonizers have come here to build a base. However, long before humans arrived, Endpoint Star already stood with a mysterious device. Surrounding it is an inexplicable force field that causes anyone who approaches to faint immediately. This force field prevents humans from investigating it. Some believe it is an ancient relic left by aliens, and people have named it the Dome. For safety's sake, human colonizers can only choose to build the base far away from the dome. Children are always filled with curiosity, and their desire is to plant their flags farther than the adults. But just a few steps into the boundary, they start to feel dizzy. A signal radiates from the dome, and soon after, the boy collapses. Seeing their companion fall, the others rush back to seek help. Before long, the boy is dragged out. This girl seems to ignore the force field. Because of this strange ability, Salver has been ostracized by her peers since childhood, becoming an outcast. Yet she does not regret having this ability because the dome is truly mesmerizing. She patrols around the force field every day because it is changing. Holding a creature from Endpoint Star, she slowly approaches the dome but stops quickly before reaching the marked point. This is because the creature in her hands has already fainted. The force field is slowly expanding. Her mother does not believe it and wants to try it herself. But after taking just a few steps, she starts to bleed from her nose. It seems the dome is awakening. The base needs to prepare early, but accidents always happen unexpectedly. Countries surrounding Endpoint Star have entered the base area. The Empire had massacred more than half of their citizens many years ago due to a misunderstanding. Since the colonizers belong to the Empire's influence, they are preparing to occupy the base this time. Although the fencing device can temporarily block attacks, the base is merely a pawn. It has been 10 years since the last contact with the Empire. They were exiled here because they believed the Empire would perish within 500 years. The name of building a base is to leave the seeds of humanity for future civilizations, but without support, the base is easily breached. Salver, who escaped, tries to find support, but the scene upon her return is extremely tragic. The force field has expanded to cover the entire base, and everyone has fainted, though they are not dead. As long as the force field does not dissipate, they will starve to death. Close to the dome, she discovers her mother has fainted, holding an original holographic device in her hand. The moment she picks it up, it seems she has found a way to unlock it. The holographic device successfully opens. A force begins to envelop the dome, and the blackness above gradually dissipates. The dome descends from the sky to the ground and then splits in two, revealing something resembling a teleportation portal. The strange force field finally disappears, and those lying on the ground begin to awaken, but those who came to occupy the base also wake up. At this moment, their lifelong enemies suddenly appear. It is Salver's boyfriend who has called for help, and both sides are at a standstill. But then the dome reacts, and a figure walks out from within. It is Seldon, who has been dead for decades. Seeing this person, who was supposed to appear, he is very pleased, thinking that the plan for the continuation of humanity has already succeeded halfway. After Seldon's death, according to his will, his coffin was launched into space. Before he died, he took a pill that contained millions of self-replicating molecular machines. These machines decomposed his body tissues into elemental components and then recycled them infinitely, collecting more materials until they transformed into what people call the dome. Now, his body is just a collection of data, This was all anticipated long ago. Seldon hopes that these two enemy planets will begin to cease hostilities from now on, but they have been at war for thousands of years. The two nations were once like family, but during a royal marriage, the queen was murdered by the king of the other nation, which led to thousands of years of vengeance. However, this is merely a legend written in history. Could it be that their history is fake? But it is known that history is written by the victors. Both nations were defeated by the Empire, and although a maid claimed to have seen it with her own eyes, she lied. Just before dying, the maid confessed that the true killer of the queen was the Empire's Clean II. A small assassination could plunge two planets into thousands of years of war, allowing the Empire to expend far less effort in preventing the threat of an alliance between the two nations. Though the Empire toyed with them, from now on, they believe they can reconcile. But even if the two nations join forces, they still cannot defeat the Empire. And that is very simple. Seldon will provide the technology for jump ships. Once both nations learn the Empire's scientific technology, everything will be possible. Galactic life will disappear in 500 years, and the plan for the base is not merely to preserve knowledge. What he aims to do is to preserve humanity. These two nations and the base will serve as the new seeds of humanity. The history of humanity is a story of constant change, but the Empire has existed for 15,000 years, and it has passed down its lineage through cloning technology. A stagnant empire without innovation is destined to lead humanity to destruction. However, once they cooperate, the Empire will discover them within weeks and eradicate them. Seldon has long had a plan. As long as the Empire thinks the base's advance team is dead, everything will be fine. They will first use the jump ships to go to the far side of a star and then activate the quantum drive while staying in subspace. In that way, the energy signal will appear as a super flare. This flare will eliminate all life, although the signal is fake, but it is common for billions of planets to experience such events. The Empire won't be able to spare the effort to investigate each one, and they will be able to continue to thrive, generation after generation, unbothered. After explaining all this, Seldon takes his leave. He will reappear during the next crisis at the base. The dome begins to merge, and soon it returns to its original state. The remaining members of the base will learn technology here, and the crisis of the Empire's demise seems to have already begun. The new Emperor, being colorblind, cannot see the colors of flowers. The genetic problem seems to foreshadow the Empire's disaster. The girlfriend doesn't know what color blindness signifies, so she gifts the Emperor a color-correcting device. All the Emperors are clones of Clean I. Their genes identical. The Empire clones 3 versions at a time according to age, and there are many generations correspondingly. They constantly absorb information from the Empire, and if something goes wrong, one will be assassinated, with the replacement immediately taking over the position. If the other 2 brothers discover that he is colorblind, he will be executed immediately. The Empire cannot tolerate any mistakes. His girlfriend suggests he escape to the Scar Zone, which is akin to a slum that the Empire would not pay attention to. However, his strange actions have caught the attention of the Dusk Emperor. As an emperor, there are strict requirements for every step, yet he has repeatedly missed dinner times. It is important to note that their genes are the same, and these things should have been innate. His explanation only makes the Dusk Emperor more suspicious. The Emperor and his girlfriend study the escape route together, unaware that all of this is being watched by the Dusk Emperor. He even discovers the flaw of his colorblindness. On the way to be taken for execution, he uses a protective ring to knock out the guards, following the previously planned escape route. But the Dusk Emperor seems to deliberately let him go. In the Scar Zone, he finds his girlfriend but unexpectedly realizes it's a trap and hurriedly tries to escape, only to be surrounded. One of them looks exactly like him. It turns out many people have long grown weary of their enslaved lives. They have spent decades figuring out how to change the Empire's cloning genes. This is also the reason why the new Emperor is colorblind. They used stolen genes to clone an Emperor in the Scar Zone. They were just waiting for today to replace his marked blood into their bodies, preparing to bide their time for the day they can take power over the Empire. But the Dusk Emperor's drones have always been here, monitoring the situation. A group of soldiers rushes in, seizing the Emperor and executing everyone else. However, they spare the girlfriend's life. After listening to this conversation, the Dusk Emperor is quite astonished. He orders the extraction of the memories from all the deceased, executing anyone related to this matter. Due to the Empire's cloning regulations, major decisions are usually made by the Day Emperor. He brings the young Emperor's girlfriend to the park. Although she is not the mastermind of the plan, she is the executor who lured the young Emperor to his grave. Thus, he has ordered a trace back to her great-great-grandparents to find those 16 living descendants. In addition to direct descendants, all cousins are included, totaling 712 individuals. Then, he searches for all past and present friends, including the boys she kissed in childhood. This includes teachers and colleagues who raised her, even servants she interacted with, plus their parents and siblings, totaling 839 people. All who know her or have indirect connections add up to 1,551 individuals, and the brain stems of all these people are now targeted by particle beams. With a gentle twist of his finger, just like that, all these people will have disappeared from the world. No matter what faint traces he may have left in the universe, they will all be erased. She will be locked in an automated cell, kept alive through intravenous injections, with all her senses permanently bound, but her consciousness will be left to repent for the harm done to the Empire until she dies of old age. What remains is the life of the young Emperor. The Dusk Emperor suggests executing him immediately and replacing him with a new clone. However, after so many years of conflict, the Day Emperor also feels that the lineage has been a mistake. Like Seldon's prophecy, if no changes are made, the Empire may indeed head towards destruction. He decides to release the young Emperor, and it is hard to believe he would trust the prophecy of a deceiver. It seems that allowing a public outing has clouded his judgment. The foundation of the Empire lies in its continuity. The two begin to argue, which is unprecedented in the history of Imperial cloning, as they bicker fiercely, even to the point of wanting to kill each other. The robots take it upon themselves to make a decision. The young Emperor's neck is snapped. This robot, which has cared for the Empire for 10,000 years, makes this choice for the unity of the Empire. The Day Emperor cannot believe the robot would disobey his orders, but it is too late now. A new replacement will take office before dinner. While pondering this, his subordinate brings news that the group of rebels who changed the genes seemed to be more terrifying than expected. Initially, they thought only Dawn's genes were altered, but after extensive testing, they discovered that the original genes of everyone had been modified. All backup bodies, including the Day Emperor himself, could have been changed, and the Dusk Emperor is currently undergoing genetic testing. After the subordinate leaves, it is unclear whether the Day Emperor feels joy or sadness. He picks up a candlestick and smashes it against the preservation cabinet of Cleon, not knowing if this signifies the impending doom of the Empire. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.